Okay.
Good afternoon, Michelle Gray at
Good afternoon.
thehealing-art.com, which I'll put at the end too. And hello, my lovely boy. I love you.
Hi, Mama. I love you. And he's behind you. He's been showing himself putting his arms and hugging you from behind, like
Oh,
picking you up, like trying to
wow.
lift
He
you
could.
up.
He could.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
could do that. No. Oh, no lipstick on the teeth this time. Yay. Okay.
Right there.
Well, we are going to talk, Eric, about Noah's Ark, and I don't know if there is a Noah. Maybe you can bring him in, but it's whatever we can do. Is that okay with you, Eric and Michelle?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so Eric's adamant about me sharing the visual. He's wearing a pair of really, really tight, what he's calling sailor shorts. And
Mm.
he's got this little shirt on and a little captain's hat. Like he tied a
Oh,
little with an anchor.
that's
And
what little boys used to wear when they were toddlers in the olden days, right?
yes, yes,
Oh God,
he's calling it like a little boy outfit, but it's a sailor suit. It's a
like
sailor suit.
it's like that dude in ACDC that always wore shorts. Funny.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's
Yeah,
funny. It's like his hair
yeah.
too, just to say. Okay. Yes. So Noah, what I'm getting from Noah's energy. So Eric has him here. I can feel him not getting okay. No, I'm getting some visual with some hair. We're getting a mixture of dark and gray, like a salt and pepper kind of look. I do see a beard and some length of hair. I'm getting like a profile type vision of him. Um, Eric says this is going to be interesting. He says that some of what we're going to talk about today might not surprise a lot of people, but might kind of shock and push the boundaries for some other people. But
Shock and
he
awe.
says,
That's what we do.
yes, yes. And he says, because he goes, Mama, you know that it's not going to surprise you to know that Noah's Ark is not exactly what the Bible says that it is.
Well,
That it's not exactly what, well, yes, he's just saying there's a lot of stories that sound really good in the Bible, and it's not that there's not truth in the Bible, but it's not literal in a lot of the stories, and he's saying Noah's Ark is one of those. It's
that
not
makes sense.
completely.
Well, maybe Noah and or Eric could tell us the real story. Tell us a bedtime story about Noah and his ark and the flood.
Okay, so they're both going to contribute here. The first thing that Noah's just saying, he's saying hello. He's just addressing that he's here, that he was invited here, that he's happy to be here.
Oh,
But
thank you
he
for
shares
coming.
that the story, he says, that was told about me is only a small portion of what I did or who I was. But he says that this story has been, he's showing it replayed, exaggerated. He's showing over time things being taken out, things being put in.
Right.
So
So
he
what
says,
happened? What's the real deal?
well, he says, did I build an ark? Yes, I did. Did I build a ship? Yes, I did. What we would term as a ship. He says, was it exactly for the purpose of the way that the Bible story tells us? Not exactly. He's first of all that ark or that the ark. He's talking about, okay, maybe explain the other part first. He's pointing to the ship. He's saying that there were floods, and he wants to talk about the time prior to the flood because he wants to lay some foundation for the story. He wants to lay a little bit of foundation of what was happening and why the floods took place. And then he will lead into where there is some truth to the ark, and then where there is, he's calling it a metaphor, that
Okay.
Noah's ark is a metaphor for his body. He says
Oh,
for the human body. Um, okay, so this is where I'm going to ask them to do a little bit less pictures and maybe a little more talk here. okay, so he says, prior to the time that I was called upon by God, he said that there were choices that were made as man. And he says, speaking man, in including all man, man, woman, he says,
Mm-hmm.
that there was less of being in the heart and connected to divinity and starting to get more into the mind. And he's showing the ego. He's also showing the choices, learning how to battle, learning how to uh, steal, greed. That humanity was becoming less connected with the true divinity of what God had intended us to be.
So wait, before I get forget, did Source speak to him, or was it an archangel, or what?
He says that he had communication with both,
Okay, which
and
archangel?
he's
All of them, or
Gabriel,
okay,
Archangel Michael.
okay,
He says that there were more,
okay,
that he's talking about. He was what we would use the term now. We would call him metaphysical. He was very metaphysical, and he had a connection to God. He had his connection to God, but he says that many of us did, but we didn't all. Whereas there was a time before when we were all connected to God. We
uh,
could all hear God. We could all take direction from God. And what was happening just prior to the time that he built the ark, just prior to that time, was when there was starting to be separation. So he first wants to acknowledge that the floods, and he's saying and addressing, not like the story we were told. He's talking about it not being a flood of the entire earth.
okay.
He says that it was not of the mass that the tale tells, that there were floods. He says there was destruction, but there was not total destruction.
Oh,
And
wait.
he's
Why
showing,
was there? What was the cause of the flood? I'm sorry. I need to interrupt at certain key points. Maybe I shouldn't, because I'm gonna get all sorts of nasty comments now. But
he says that he's saying that that's okay. He
okay,
says that the questions are important. So he's just acknowledging that that's all right. He doesn't mind.
okay.
The
See,
questions
guys.
are,
So hold off on the haters.
yes. Um, he's saying that the earth was shifting.
Oh,
He's calling it a cleanse. And so
okay,
he says this is where he's going to include metaphor. So he wants there to be some understanding that as he speaks, and Erik is saying that Erik will do the best he can to help me explain as I'm speaking, because they are giving me visuals and they are speaking as part of the story and the flood of cleansing and relating to this as of the human body and of the spiritual path. So, okay. All right, no, go ahead. So he says that there was, as the earth shifts now, as the earth it ascends and grows, growth was happening then, just as it is now.
was it a tilt of the
So
shift? By shift, you mean axis, or shift to a little higher dimension, or what?
he says a little bit of both,
Okay,
um, but he does put more energy to the axis, and he also shows like uh, so there were waters that were not connected that became connected,
okay,
like the ocean, like it becoming that there was land. And so he's also okay. Erik's just adding that scientifically, some of what they're looking for, they're going to find more villages or villages, Erik, or like Atlantis. We're going to find more of that
okay.
in the
Ooh,
ocean, that
yeah,
there's more in the ocean, because this will show that there was civilization that was
yeah.
in areas of the ocean where we have not understood to be on the map. Yes, okay, he says
Cool.
right. Okay. So he just wants us to understand that, and then to also look at the floods as being everything is an act of God. Everything is God.
Including
So,
us. Yeah.
yes. And so he says, was
And
this
the
an
earth.
act
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
God? Yes. He says, yes. Of course, this was an act of God. But this was also a cleansing. But what God was saying to Noah, and they're showing this as a teaching, as a metaphor, to build the ark. And building the ark was a representation of the physical body. The cleansing being, and Erik saying this part, the cleansing being the change. There was no longer a connection to God in the way that there was prior to the floods,
Yeah.
that connection had changed. Now, Noah is just saying that there was a physical ark that he built. He's saying that there was direction. He's not saying that it was called an ark, because every time I say ark, he says Noah's ark and does this to the body.
Oh, well,
This
how
is
big
the
was
ark.
it? And what did you design it for? In anticipation of the floods, or you just,
Yes,
yeah.
yes,
Okay. Well,
because
how big was this ark? How many
he's
feet
saying that it
long?
was very, very, he says, very, very big. He's going like
Wow.
this, very, very big. Um, he says that there is actual, this was not the only, not in this dimension. He also shows that it's rounded, that it's not as long as the way we see it in the way that it's drawn, or the way that the Bible shows it being very, very long, and it is, but it has more of a rounded look
So it's
to
more
it.
tall than,
Yes,
well,
yes.
give me some
And like
dimensions
a
in meters or
boat.
feet. How many, yeah, almost like three, rub it up dub, 3 minute tub. How tall
Erik is
was it?
saying football fields.
Oh, wow.
So
So that long?
Erik, yes.
And,
And Noah did not build it alone.
oh, God, of course not. How
He
tall
did,
was it?
but
Sorry.
5 football fields, 5 football
God.
fields tall.
What is it what they found in some remains in Ararat or something, someplace in Turkey?
Yes, he said that there are remains, um,
Okay.
that but it's not been discovered. So there are people that feel that they found it, but there's really been no. He said there's been no tangible pieces that have been laid out, or
Oh, wow. So the whole thing in Turkey, those remains are really not part of your ship, your boat.
no.
Okay.
Um, but he's holding his finger up and he's saying, but, but he says, I was not the only one that built. Now he is citing that the one
Ah,
that he built was of grandeur size,
yes.
and but that there was direction, or there was some sort of a like it was okay. Erik is giving the, like, everybody's passing around notes, like, hey, this
Oh,
is how
yeah.
you build your hey, this is how you build your ark. And Erik's like, hey, over here, I've got it. This is how you build your ark. And so he's saying that there were other arks.
And that's
So
what they
there were
found in
other,
Turkey, probably.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
Well,
because
where
he's
is
just
your
saying
ark?
that
Where,
only one.
where are the remains of your
He's
ark?
he's saying no longer, and he is showing in that area.
Hmm.
He is showing that it's not far off of that area, but it's not tangible, stuck it somewhere where they're going to find it. He's showing it being disintegrated, it
Okay.
being no longer.
Okay, where are these civilizations? Which part of the ocean you're talking about will eventually uncover these civilizations?
So near China,
Oh, okay.
um, somewhere in that area.
China Seas, maybe,
Um,
or
mhm.
okay.
And he's saying deep seas, or um, something known as the Blue Sea,
Okay.
or he's saying the Blue Sea, whatever
Okay.
the Blue Sea is. Um, you want to ask him something? He's just kind of silent for a second.
Oh,
He's
okay,
not
okay.
really saying anything.
When the floods did come, were they 40 days, 40 nights kind of thing, or?
He says yes. And this was, again, he says that it wasn't because God said that this is the way it was going to be. As okay, just slow down just a little bit. He's talking about the cleanse of the body. So, metaphorically speaking, in the spiritual awakening, or the awakening to oneself, because what Noah was representing was what every human being was then going to have to go through, was then going
Oh,
to experience, was the separation from the mind to the heart, and
mm,
then going through the cleanse, which is the flood, and then going through the awakening to one's heart, to the divinity of one's heart. And the spiritual awakening that we look at now, we would call it, Eric's saying, the dark soul, or the dark soul of the night, like the shadow part of our awakening.
oh, oh,
And that is the 40 days and 40 nights, and representing being put in this ship and being closed up and having to go through this process that is completely in the dark and unknown and unsure of where you're going to land. And
yeah.
that it's a lot of metaphor. Eric's just saying that there's so much metaphor to this story. Is there truth that there were animals on board? Yes. Were there people on board? Yes. But there were also animals and people on board of other boats as well.
Well,
It
how
wasn't.
many? So it wasn't a pair, female, male pair of every living creature, was there?
Not, no, there were, because again, the female and male, the part of that story is showing the polar, the divine masculine and feminine within each one of
Oh,
us. So it's
ooh,
showing that polarity. It will represent the entire spiritual being, the entire spiritual path. So there were, many male and female of everything. But they're also, okay, so this part here, okay, maybe be a little bit clear about this. Okay, so what he's showing me is he wants to also make note of the ark being a representation of sacred geometry,
ooh,
and that sacred geometry being, okay, he doesn't want me to use the word closed, but a portal was opened. So this is where he's showing me where he had more to him than what was ever described in the Bible, or more to him than what was ever put in any stories. And there being an exit from the earth that we know, the planet that we live on right now, and the dimension that we live on right now, that there was an exit of creatures, of animals that no longer exist with us in the dimension that we are physically in right now. For example, unicorns,
oh, okay.
dragons,
So they went to a different dimension through a
yes,
portal.
yes.
Well,
And that the building of the ark was representation of the sacred geometry that then opens that space, and that they moved into a different dimension, and then that would be closed back down. And he's just showing that there's a relation to how they moved from one plane to another.
wow. All right, this brings me to this thing about people were asking about the Anunnaki and all that. Let me read this. Was the original Noah's Ark built because Enki had slipped a note under the door of the abode of Noah, and he told Noah to build it? And was the water that flooded the earth caused by an ice shelf on the pole that fell off? Well, first of all, we'll stop there. Is that true? That Enki slipped a note under your door
And he's saying no.
and the ice
He's saying
shelf slipped off the pole? Did that cause it, the flood?
no.
Okay, we talked about the actions. Okay, and the cleansing is Oh, it was the note. Well, you said there was no note. Was there anything that had to do with the Anunnaki, which means those from heaven to earth? What is the formal name of their alien race? The Orion
Yes.
DZ or are they the Babylonians? What does DZ stand for in the Orion DZ? I'm so confused. Okay, tell me
Well,
about
he's
the
just, I don't know
ET
what the
thing.
heck that is, but he is saying yes, and he's saying that
Yes to what? I just had a
uh,
garbled bunch of questions there. There was
yes,
ETs involved? The Anunnaki?
yes,
Okay.
and that what he's showing is there being disruption. So because he's showing like a friendship that turns into greed, and that
On
this is
whose
part of
part? And what?
um, the Anunnaki, or
Okay.
there's some sort of something that they had taught or had done that was intermingled with humanity. And so that he says, like, when he was talking about being disconnected from the mind and the heart, this was part of that. And so that this was part of the needing to be cleansed. He's leading this right back to what he just spoke of about the spiritual body and about being disconnected in mind and heart, that they were part of that. And this had to do with control. But there
Okay.
was also other race there, because he's saying ET race, and he says that the Bible will describe them as angels.
Oh,
We'll call
yeah.
them as angels, and not that there weren't angels there, because he's saying that there are different types, but that the way human was looking at it was as an angel or angelic being. But he's showing that there were other races that were connected to us, and when the floods happened, it's like there was a retraction, and there were some that stayed on earth, or that were still connected to earth, or had some sense of, speaking about the Anunnaki, some sense of, I don't want to use the word control, but influence. There was some
Okay.
kind of influence that was still present.
Okay. Were they benevolent then, all in all?
No, he's saying that they were not all benevolent, but he's also saying that, okay, he wants to just be clear that it's not that there was a difference in how the operation was, the difference of how they operated, the human being and the way they were. And he's saying not all. So there were some that he's calling them infected.
Oh, but overall, what were the motives? What was the intentions of the Anunnaki race in this whole thing, moving through animals and stuff through portals, et cetera, et cetera? Not the bad apples, but
Yeah, because he says that that was all over control, but the other one was over um, like protection,
okay.
salvation, um, preservation,
Okay. All right. Now,
the change of
oh, go ahead.
humanity on earth, he says.
Yeah.
The change of humanity's path.
Okay, this one person's question is kind of interesting. I heard a story that Noah's Ark was actually an extraterrestrial spaceship that was used to move animals and people off the planet. Is this true? Well, I think that's probably in part true. It wasn't actually a spaceship, but she's referring here. She is referring to the portal, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. Because Eric's just nodding. As soon as you started talking, Eric goes, he goes, woo, and he goes, yeah, it is a ship.
Oh,
It
well,
is.
yeah.
He goes, it's a ship, and does it go through time and space or portals, dimensions? Yes, it does.
Well,
So
what
in
what was it
part,
made
yes.
of?
He's saying like trees. There's a
Okay.
tree.
All right.
Yeah.
How many in actuality, not in metaphor terms, how many animals and also how many people were on your ark, your ship?
He's saying thousands upon thousands.
Oh, wow. Well, how many? Like over 2,000?
He's saying over 100,000.
Oh, God. Is that people and animals?
Mhm.
together? How many of those were people?
He's saying a smaller amount of people.
Okay.
I don't getting the exact number, but he's just doing this with his hand, like
Oh,
smaller.
okay. How in the world were you able to feed and take care of them? Not to mention scooping up all the poop. How?
He says this is where it's interdimensional. Is there's metaphysical, supernatural meaning.
Oh, hey,
He says
send this bag of poop through the portal, please, God. I hate to be on
he says
the other end of that.
it's not exactly. He says there's a lot of supernatural to a lot of these stories, and he says it's not only Jesus that could create miracles.
Wow, interesting. So miraculously, they were cared for, um,
Yeah.
animal and man. How many people died in the flood? And also, how many animals died in the flood, for that matter?
He says it would be very different than what our population is now. It was a
Oh,
much
yeah.
smaller population. Um,
Well, you could give a percentage if you want, if that's better.
okay, yes, okay. So he shows me a pie, and she shows me 3/4 of the pie.
Or dead animals and people.
Yes.
Okay.
He's
Gosh, that's
not
bad.
saying that he doesn't say that everybody was wiped out. But he's not saying because it wasn't an entire world.
No,
The
no. Yeah.
civilizations were wiped out. Yeah.
Well, what continents did the flood cover in our geology today? Geography. China, Russia, Middle East, I don't know.
Yeah, he says what we would know now as the Middle East in
Okay.
that area.
Okay. Did Noah have a DNA sample from every animal living at the time and took it on the ark, or did he really have every animal? No, he didn't do that.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it wasn't necessary.
Um, Describe a typical day on the ark.
Well, I tell you what's really interesting is just when you're talking a couple of moments ago, Erik shows me, and they're just bringing me back to this right now. He shows taking a zipper, and not that it really is a zipper, but taking a zipper to like the fabric, like the air, opening it up, and we're herding through people and animals.
Oh, oh wow.
Nobody's really on the ark. It's not that we're really floating on the ark. The
Right.
animals have like a space that they're existing in.
Oh,
There's
okay.
like a, so it's not really they were on the ark and that they're physically scooping poop and feeding and
But
doing
there
things
was
like
a thing made, a big giant football, five football, I mean, one
yes,
football thing of wood, right? So
yes,
what was
yes.
going on in that? The actual physical boat, ship.
He says, well, um, not much different than what you would imagine that would happen on a boat like this. He
Okay.
says there were there were there was physicality on the boat. So he
Yeah.
says that it's not that everything was we opened up the air, we opened up the fabric, and we all walked through and we were in another land. He goes, it
Mm.
wasn't quite like that, although the capacity for the amount that we were able to, meaning in animals, not people. He says people remained on the boat.
Ah,
He says it's animals that went through interdimensionally.
ah,
Um, he says that there was help prior to the flooding with angels, because he's also showing there being some angelic energy there, some
oh,
angelic energy that assisted
yeah.
them. And he just shows darkness like sleep.
Mm.
So he's not giving me like a play by play.
Yeah, it's fine. It would be too much
Yeah,
anyway. But there was
getting a
cooking and
journal and saying number one did this, number two fed the lambs. But
oh
it's
my God. So
yeah.
it's not that. So, but there was probably some cooking, right? And did you have fire on the boat? That can be dangerous, but
Yeah, he's actually saying no to that.
Oh,
He's
so
actually saying no to that.
so what
Yeah.
did you eat?
Um, fodder. Like looks like some sort of corn,
Okay,
some sort of like a grain.
okay,
It can slip through your hands. It's
all right. And
dry.
they could just like popcorn in a movie theater, and for the animals too, I guess. All right, and some of it was brought by supernatural or angelic means, I'm sure, right?
Well, and he's also saying too that like so this would be connected to something of the lines of what he's talking about with the angels saying that the requirements of the body,
Oh,
having assistance with not having the same requirements of the body. He's talking about this being like Noah's ark is like the example of our spiritual shifting, of our own ascension. And so his body is also going through this same adjustment. Everybody on the ark, as representation of the body, doing the exact things. So not always requiring the physical needs.
I see.
Not
Like
always requiring.
breatharians. Like
Yes,
breatharians.
yes,
Okay,
yes,
cool.
yes.
Look that up on my site, guys, the blog. Anyway, who was the female that you took brought on to the ship, and why did you choose her?
He's just okay. So he's showing separate because he had a wife.
Oh,
So he's showing that this is somebody else. So this is because he's showing the eyes. It was her eyes.
okay.
Something in her eyes being part of their experience. It was in her eyes. So there was a lot of fear. So I don't know if they're speaking of somebody that separately had approached him wanting to go on the ark because
Well,
he
Eric,
says
what
that
is it? Yeah, maybe Eric, or what is Noah trying to say or show?
what Erik is sharing is that there were a lot of people that did not plan for the floods.
Yeah,
There was a lot of people that didn't believe or um, thought that it was not going to be the way it was. And so there were people that became very scared
yeah,
when it got closer to it happening. And so he's showing this woman with fear or
yeah.
this woman being scared and that she was brought on. So it was like,
Okay.
we have no more room. We have no more room. And then she was brought on.
No more room at the end. Did Noah have? Did you have children with her or your wife during the period
Yes.
for both?
He's showing that he already had children.
Oh, you already had children. Did you father any children with this person you took in?
He's saying no.
Okay. Where did all the children end up, grow up, end up living? Any, the children that were on the ship, the physical ship.
He's talking about them being in, um, there was a lot of what we would consider incest.
Okay.
Um, he says there was a lot of multiplication in close quarters, and this being in, uh, he says in the Middle East area. I don't know if
Okay.
there's a specific area, but he's just showing that communities were staying small populated, but there was also some that moved across water,
Okay.
ended up going across water, but there was a lot of um, like brother sister coupling.
Maybe because so much of the population was wiped out. And I think it was probably not considered as taboo then as it is now.
No, and there's also some genetic, um, because what Erik is just sharing is that it wasn't always considered something that was wrong, just
Right.
like you had said, and that there is some genetic component to it because in showing after the cleanse, after the flood, there was a different scenario on earth. It was a different experience. And so this it has some of what our
I
DNA
see.
carries with
Yeah.
some diseases.
Okay. Where do you think your great grandchildren are now? I'm sure they're all over the place, but where's the biggest concentration?
He says Europe.
Okay. Now back to the sacred geometry, because you said that the ark had a lot of sacral geometry involvement. Can you go more into that? I mean, tell me whatever, because I know nothing. I see nothing.
He's just saying that it like everything has a code, everything has a pattern to it. So he says the patterns of the earth, that the sacred geometry is the connection inside, is the connection of up here of heaven,
Mm-hmm.
and the connection on earth. And so he says that this is encoded within us. And
Oh.
so the ark was the pure representation of that same pattern within the
Oh.
human body.
Did it also have something to do with opening the portals?
Yes, yes,
I
it did.
figured. All
Yes.
right, real quick. This is the lightning round. Uh, how old did Noah's wife, and actually you, Noah, live to be, and what was her name? Nobody seems to know, apparently. Just real briefly.
I get a D for a name. I want to say Demetra or
Okay,
something, but
that's good enough. Names are
and
tough.
he's also saying many thought that I lived a lot longer than I did, and although he says he did live longer than what we do now, he's citing around 165 years.
Ooh, how about the wife? How old did she get to be?
He says just shortly before him. So
I gotcha. Okay. Now, what is gopher wood? I guess that's what you used, right? And what would gopher wood be called today, if it even exists anymore?
oak,
Oh, okay.
like
And
a
the pitch.
or a drift. He's saying it was a lighter wood. So he
Okay.
says it really would be closer to the value of like a driftwood, but a
Oh,
bit more
oh,
weight to it.
okay. And the pitch that was applied to the outside, where'd you get it? Was it a petroleum product or like pine, gum, tar? What was your
Yeah,
recipe?
he's showing it being expressed again from a tree, and he's
Oh,
from
okay.
olive, some kind of oil like made from olives or olive branches.
Okay.
He's showing like an extract
Okay. Cool.
from a tree.
What was your favorite food? Boxers are brief. Come on. Just kidding. If you had a favorite,
He says
what did you like the
fruit,
most?
fruit.
Fruit. Oh,
He's actually showing that something that looks like a nectarine or a
okay.
peach.
Hmm. What color eyes did you have, and what color hair before it turned uh, salt and pepper?
Blue eyes, and he had dark brown hair.
Okay. Height and weight approximately?
He says that he would be not as tall as your average man right now, so around 5'6",
I
five
knew you were going
five.
to say that. Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Weighed about 170 pounds, 165 pounds.
Okay. All right. Let me see. Let me see. Total number of animals. Okay. I think some of these are just repeats. Were all of our continents one big continent back then, like Pangea?
Mm, not completely, but so he's showing me
Okay.
just with the oceans, like with the water. So there's some truth to that, but not
Okay.
one big continent. No.
Okay. What language did you speak?
Arabic
Okay.
or something like
Something
Arabic.
very like pre-Arabic.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Um, did you write on
He's calling it old dialect is
an
how he's
old dialect
describing
of
it.
Arab? Okay.
Old
Okay.
dialect. Yes.
Well, say hello in that language. And I'll put it in Google Translate. Just kidding.
I'll tell you the only thing that I hear is eh.
Eh. Okay. He's probably saying,
Like a
why
roll
do
of
you ask these
I can
stupid
hear like
questions?
a roll I hear like a roll of the tongue. Like I don't even know how to do it without looking like a
Oh,
fool.
okay. Well, say your name in that language.
Noe.
Ugh, I bet. Okay.
Noe.
Did you write on clay tablets or did you have a photographic memory or both, really?
Both.
Okay, cool. Um, uh, did your wife weave and spin, or or do they use animal skins?
Yes.
Okay, all of the above. Did Methuselah help you build the ark, or just you and the boys and girls, or other people?
And he says the people. He's calling it the
Okay,
people.
all right. Um, were the daughters from different tribes, like I think we believe, his daughters?
He's saying yes.
Okay. And the names of the daughters-in-law, but I don't think it's names are tough. Why didn't Noah swat those two mosquitoes? See, I don't know this story at all.
He's saying that this isn't physical. That's not.
Oh, it's a metaphor.
Yeah.
Not swatting the mosquito was don't hurt a living creature, or is that the metaphor?
I was just asking him what exactly does that mean then? Something that's perceived as bad is not necessarily bad.
Oh,
Something that's perceived as wrong is not necessarily wrong.
oh,
Everything belongs. Everything is part and parcel. Everything is of polarity. And so he's talking about perception.
hmm, okay. Uh, Somebody would also like to know the real reason for the flood. Kind of know that already. But was it because the human's DNA was being tainted by aliens from another planet or dimension? I mean, was that one factor?
Yes.
Okay, well, this might also elucidate because I see aliens in the sentence. These so-called aliens referred to as uh, Nephilim, I don't know if I'm pronouncing
Yes.
that right, were supposedly giants who also constructed the pyramids and other large structures. Is that true?
Yes. There's some truth to that. He says that's part of it.
And so what do they have to do with Noah and the ark and human DNA and all that?
He's talking about mating. Um,
Ooh, mating with a giant? Oh boy. Hmm.
um, I don't know if they were they were born because of of mating, like of higher
Oh,
beings mating.
yeah.
Because there's so much more to it. Because Erik is just saying that there are different factors
Oh, maybe
to
they
this
inserted
story.
DNA genes into our DNA somehow. They had the technology.
Yes, we were altered. This is part of the story where Erik said that this is where our science and spirituality meet, where there is evidence of some of these stories, and yet they're not in the Bible. And just like we exist now, where there are stories being told right now in history that are not being told truthful,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we can generally tell when that is, that there have also been much that's been taken out of the Bible and of other texts and stories to suit control and to omit certain things. And so that there is truth to these stories. And he says this gives a much deeper explanation as to why some of this evidence exists right now.
Interesting. Well, so what was the most important thing that was about your story that was removed from the Bible?
He says well, he says the obvious one is that the story is really about our spirituality, that it's
Okay.
really about coming back to connecting with ourselves. But he says, as far as in understanding our own history, the disservice that was taken out of it was the connection to ET race.
Right?
Some of the explanations, and Erik is just saying that also remember that because there'll be some people that'll say, well, I knew that, and that really sucks, and why they did that, and they did us a huge disservice. But Erik also says this is also part of our learning path. This is
Yeah.
also part of our own discovery as well. So it's not all a bad thing,
Yeah.
but that there was a lot omitted in that story. And Noah says that part of why he was chosen to do this was because of his connection with God and his own ascension and spirituality. So he says that, we weren't all put in the story in the same way that Jesus was, but it
Oh,
doesn't make any of us any less valuable.
no.
And Erik just does, and Jesus would say that as well.
Yeah. And so they changed it to control by saying, God is pissed off at all you guys, sinners and stuff, so he's going to make it flood for 40, rain for 40 days. Is that what they
Yes,
did? All right,
yes.
so back to is there any relationship between these Nephilim, these giants, and the Anunnaki in this story, in the setting of this story?
He says that yes, but it's not like a linear, but there's connection. Yes.
Like cousins. Did the
Yes.
Nephilim, did they help build the ark since they were so huge?
He says yes. Yes.
Okay, were they, well, not all of them maybe, but were they good guys?
Um, he's calling them different. It's not the like. Okay, no, just say it. Like, like a beast type energy, like a little
Oh,
bit.
okay.
Like there could be some anger, and I feel like there was some constraint on them somehow. So there was some control put over them. Not all of them,
By
but some.
whom? Who could control a giant? The Anunnaki, maybe? I don't know.
It feels like mental. Yes, like
Oh, the
um.
Anunnaki?
Mhm.
They should have worn tinfoil hats.
Erik just said a triangle. He goes, it's a triangle.
Oh, yeah. My sister was in the real bohemian phase, my older sister, and she made us wear little uh, metallic um, triangle hats. It was kind of funny. And I said, you could dry fruit under these things. Oh no, okay, I didn't never try that. But so anyway, just to sum up the Anunnaki, alien, Nephilim, the Nephilim were controlled by the Anunnaki and sort of constrained so that they could help build the ark with the humans also. And then the Anunnaki, although there were some dissidents or some that were not so good, their whole purpose was, let's get you guys out of here, and because it's going to be a flood. I don't know if they influenced the flood and tilted the angle, and put all these things through this portal. Was that it?
Yes, that's a very good sum up, Erik says. Mom, that's a really good roundup.
Okay, so well, what does it have to do with tainted DNA? It's like they
So
wanted to,
that has,
they wanted to kill all the people who died in the flood, getting
yes,
rid of them.
yes, yes.
Okay,
There's
okay,
also so the breeding too. So
okay.
like breeding the DNA, and not all of it being like creating the different mind, creating the different mind, not
What?
in the heart.
Oh, what do you mean?
Some of the beings like altering the DNA, meaning that it's like taking okay, being less in the heart and more in the mind. That's what they keep showing. Like that the
So they're saying that something altered our DNA that
Mhm.
contributed to us disconnecting from our heart
Yes,
and operating through our mind. Who did that?
yes.
What did that? Or biology of belief, maybe. I don't know. The bad
Well, that's part of
Anunnaki.
it. That yes, he says yes, and okay, whatever. Because I keep getting like they had like Erik's like they had sex.
Okay.
So there's two
I'm
like
blushing.
beings that had sex that are like coming down and having sex is how he's saying it.
With humans.
So
Anunnaki
um
or some other
yes,
being. But
yeah,
bad?
he's saying that not all in for positive reasons, like
Oh.
more in like multiplying, wanting to
Oh.
multiply. wanting to grow their own race.
Oh, did they realize that they were changing through breeding or through some other manipulation of DNA, that they were creating this separation of from the heart and from source? Or was it just like a coincidence, an unintended consequence?
Um, it was it was not a factor. So yes, it's control. So yes, it's taking away from that understanding that we're all connected to source and we all have that power within us.
That was
It's taking
intentional.
all of that away. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
all right. Last question. How did the whole thing end? Did you get shipwrecked? I mean, what happened at the end? And did everybody
He
survive the journey?
he says yes, and he says that he's shipwrecked. Yes, he goes. That's a very good way of putting it.
Where
Yes.
did it, was it, so did they swim to land or, how, or get swept up by the portal or what?
He says that this is a part of the story that we can call somewhat true about sending a bird out looking for land,
Oh, okay.
but he's saying like an angel
Hmm.
out looking for land
Okay.
and being able to be steered to land,
Oh,
um, being on calm water,
oh, good.
steered to land.
So steered, how did it go? Did it have sails? Didn't have a motor? Or did it just, I mean, did God or angels steer the boat?
He says, think of it as if there was a giant magnet in the water pulling us.
Oh, cool. So that's got to be ET or angelic, right?
He's calling it supernatural power.
Oh, why did it have to go anywhere? Why couldn't it just stay there until the flood waters receded? Maybe it did.
He says it was. This was something that this wasn't like a trip that just took a day.
Yeah.
So there was land that was receding. So he's saying by the time they would reach destination, it would be receded enough. And he's not showing that there is like a feeling of time and not a feeling
Oh,
of
okay.
waiting.
Okay. But receding, like covered with water so that they could cross over the land with the boat?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So where did it shipwreck and was that on purpose?
He says not necessarily on purpose. He is showing that it's near Turkey.
Okay. Some kind of angels, but yet the remains are in the blue sea. I don't know where that is. Yeah. It could be the
Yeah, whatever
currents
the.
carried away after it disintegrated. Those currents can take pieces of the boats
Mm-hmm,
everywhere. So is
mm-hmm.
that what happened? It kind of got dispersed.
Uh, he said it's been scattered. It's been
Okay.
scattered. Yes. So you're not going
Wow.
to find.
Cool.
He's also talking about what they were made of as well, and that some of the conditions where they find the boats um, might be more preserved.
Okay.
Some of the areas have different um, uh, like temperatures or
Oh yeah.
conditions
Yeah.
that would preserve it, and he's just saying that there wasn't the preservation
Okay.
and that now it would be so difficult to be able to identify.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Wow. Michelle, do you have any other questions for Noah? And or Eric, do you have any questions? This has been fascinating. One of the best,
Yeah,
man.
I don't. This was not what I was expecting at all.
God, I don't know anything
Like,
about the
I really
Bible. Oh,
didn't.
I'm a sinner.
Well,
Oh.
neither do I. And Erik was warning me today. Well, I mean, I went to church when I was a kid, so I
Mm,
do remember some of the Bible stories. But um, what Erik was saying to me today was, okay, get ready. It's not quite what you think. It's not
cool.
quite what you think. And he was making me a little bit nervous too, because I'm
Oh.
like, okay, where are we going with this? But anyway, it was very cool. So
Oh.
I really
Thank you. You
appreciate
did,
doing it.
wow, you did an awesome job, Michelle. You guys get in touch with her, like I said, at thehealingh-art.com, which I'll put right here. Thank you, Mr. Noah, so much. This has been wonderful. It's so awesome to be able to set, you know, to pick out the truth from the fiction and the metaphors from the reality. So I appreciate that.
He says, thank you for your time. Thank you.
And Eric, thank you so much for helping us communicate with him And thank you for being my little boy who I love so much. Bye.
He says, "You got it, Mama. Love you.
Love you too. Love you, Michelle.
Love you too, Lisa.
Bye.
Bye."